The perfect lie. The perfect marriage or the perfect lie. What if the marriage of your dreams was just elaborate nightmare? Subscribe now to unravel this dark secret. Arthur Sterling, a self-made real estate magnate, had it all. A stunning mansion on the Boston coast, a booming business, and a beautiful, pregnant wife, Eleanor. But on one night of torrential rain, Eleanor disappears without a trace. While the entire city holds its breath, Arthur and his mistress, Sophia Ramos, toast to a future finally free of obstacles. They believe their secret is safe. They believe they have committed the perfect crime. But they forgot one small detail. Her diary and the secrets scribbled on its pages are about to set their world of perfection on fire. This is a story of how a tragic victim's words, spoken from beyond the grave, brought down an empire and a murderer. The Sterling estate was a monument to new money, a sprawling contemporary mansion of glass and white stone, perched precariously on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. From the infinity pool, which seamlessly blended with the horizon, you could watch dolphins leaping in the waves. Arthur Sterling adored that view. It's the view of a king, he often told himself as he gazed upon his kingdom. And Eleanor Vance, his wife of 5 years, was supposed to be his queen. Eleanor was beautiful, with that quiet elegance that made other women feel instantly insecure. She had been a librarian when they met, a calm, bookish woman who seemed an unlikely match for the brash, ambitious Arthur. But he had courted her with the same intensity and determination he applied to his business, and she had been swept away by his charisma and his promises of a life she had only read about in novels. Now, 7 months pregnant with their first child, she found herself living in a gilded cage. The silence of the vast, minimalist rooms amplified the emptiness she felt inside. The pregnancy had been Arthur's idea, another acquisition to complete the image of his perfect life. He had been euphoric, hosting a lavish party where he announced the news to his friends. His friends, really, as if he himself had conceived the child through sheer force of will. Eleanor had smiled until her cheeks ached, her hand resting on her swollen belly, a vessel for her husband's legacy. But lately, a growing disquiet had taken hold of her. Arthur was more distant than ever, his phone perpetually glued to his hand, his business trips more frequent, his explanations more vague. He came home late, with the scent of a strange floral perfume clinging to his clothes, a scent that was definitely not hers. When she gently asked him about it, he laughed, calling her paranoid, a side effect of pregnancy hormones. He would lift her chin, kiss her forehead, and tell her he loved her, his eyes as cold and empty as the glass walls of their home. The name of the perfume, Eleanor would discover, was Black Orchid, and the woman who wore it was Sophia Marin. Sophia was everything Eleanor was not, a fiery, passionate artist with a wild mane of dark curls and a laugh that could fill a room. She was a rising star in the art world, her abstract canvases sold for astronomical prices. Arthur had become her most devoted patron, a fact he didn't bother to hide. He would boast of his discovery, hosting exclusive exhibitions and introducing her to his circle of wealthy investors. He spoke of her talent with a reverence Eleanor had never heard him use for anything but a stock portfolio. Eleanor had only met Sophia once, at a charity gala. Arthur had insisted she go, despite her advanced pregnancy. He had guided her through the crowd, his hand a possessive brand on the small of her back, before leaving her at a table with the other wives. He then made a beeline for Sophia, who was holding court by the bar, a vision in a blood-red dress that hugged her every curve. Eleanor watched them all night, a knot of ice forming in her stomach. She saw the way Arthur looked at her, The way he leaned in close, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered something that made her throw her head back and laugh. It was a look of raw, unreserved desire, a look he hadn't given Eleanor in years. That night, Eleanor began a diary. It was a simple, leather-bound book she'd had since college, its pages once filled with literary quotes and dreams of traveling the world. Now it became her confidant, the silent keeper of her fears. October 12th. Arthur was with her again tonight. He called it a last-minute investor meeting, but he came home smelling of turpentine and black orchid. He thinks I don't know, or maybe he simply doesn't care. He looks right through me these days, as if I am already a ghost. Sometimes I feel like one. October 25th. Today I saw her car, a classic red convertible. It was parked 2 blocks from Arthur's downtown office, the one he claims he rarely uses. I sat in my car for an hour, watching the building, my heart thumping against my ribs. I felt like a fool, a pathetic, pregnant fool. Why can't I just confront him? Because I am afraid of what he will say, afraid of what he will do, afraid of being alone. Her entries grew more desperate as the weeks passed. She documented the late-night calls, the flimsy alibis, the mounting credit card bills from boutique hotels and designer stores she'd never set foot in. She was building a case, though she didn't know for what. A divorce? He would crush her. Arthur Sterling did not lose. The turning point came in early December. Arthur announced he had to fly to Singapore for an urgent business trip. He kissed her goodbye at the door, a perfunctory peck on the cheek, telling her to take care of herself and the little one. The next day, while she was scrolling through social media, a habit she had acquired to fill the empty hours, she saw it. A photo posted by one of Sophia's friends. It was a group shot on a sun-drenched beach. In the background, unmistakable against the turquoise water, was a man with Arthur's profile, his arm possessively around Sophia's shoulders. The caption read, "Art Bustle. Miami has been a dream, especially with these 2 lovebirds." The phone slipped from Eleanor's numb fingers, clattering onto the marble floor. He had lied with such ease, such nonchalance. The betrayal was a physical blow that knocked the air from her lungs. It wasn't just an affair. It was a whole other life he was living, a life that didn't include her or their unborn child. In that moment, something inside her shifted. The fear that had paralyzed her for months began to turn into a cold, hard determination. He wasn't going to just discard her. She wouldn't let him. She was more than a ghost in a glass house. She was Eleanor Ruiz Vance, and she had a secret of her own. She went to Arthur's home office, a sleek, sterile room she rarely entered. She knew the code to his personal safe. It was the date of his first major acquisition, a number he revered like a sacred relic. Her hands trembled as she keyed it in. The heavy door swung open. Inside, among stock certificates and property deeds, was a set of files he thought she knew nothing about. Files that detailed offshore accounts, shell companies, and a pattern of systematic fraud that had built the Sterling Empire on a foundation of lies. She had stumbled upon them by accident months ago while looking for an insurance policy. She hadn't understood the complex web of transactions then, but she knew it was illegal. She knew it was the kind of secret that could destroy him. And now, she finally had a reason to use it. She spent the next 2 days meticulously photographing every document with her phone, her heart thumping with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. This was her leverage, her escape plan. Her last diary entry was written the night before Arthur returned, December 8th. He comes home tomorrow. The lie about Singapore will be the first of many I will have to endure, but not for long. He thinks I am weak. He thinks I am a fool. He has no idea what I am capable of. He is about to find out. This is no longer just about the affair. This is about survival. My babies and mine. I have a plan. I pray I am strong enough to carry it out. She closed the diary, tucked it into her handbag, and went to bed. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel like a ghost. She felt like a storm gathering strength just beyond the horizon, and she was about to make landfall. A cold-blooded crime. The rain started just after nightfall, a relentless downpour that lashed against the glass walls of the Sterling mansion. It was the night of December 9th. Arthur had been home for less than 6 hours. He had walked in with a bouquet of golden lilies, funereal and sickly sweet, and a story about a deal that had gone so well in Singapore that he'd decided to celebrate with a quick detour to Miami on his way back. He didn't even have the decency to look her in the eye when he said it. Eleanor played her part, the docile, slightly flustered wife. She smiled, thanked him for the flowers, and asked about his flight. She bustled around the kitchen, preparing dinner, her body a slow, deliberate vessel of maternal calm, while inside, her nerves were as taut as piano wire. Her handbag, containing the diary and the damning evidence on her phone, was in the passenger seat of her car in the garage. Her plan was simple: confront him after dinner, use the evidence as a shield, and demand a quiet, generous divorce. She had already contacted a lawyer, a fierce woman specializing in high-stakes divorces, and had a preliminary consultation scheduled for the following week, but dinner never happened. As she was pulling a roast from the oven, Arthur strode into the kitchen, dressed to go out. He was wearing a custom charcoal suit and a new, obscenely expensive watch. The scent of his cologne, a sharp, citrusy fragrance, filled the air, mingling with the aroma of roasted rosemary. "Change of plans, Eleanor," he said, not looking at her as he adjusted his tie in the reflection of the stainless steel refrigerator. "Something came up at the office. A crisis. I have to go." "A crisis?" she asked, her voice flat. "At 8 o'clock on a Saturday night?" He finally turned to her, his face a mask of annoyed impatience. "Yes, a crisis. These things don't keep office hours, you know that. Don't wait up for me." He was going to see her. Sophia. The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. He couldn't even wait a single night. He was leaving his pregnant wife, who had just spent the afternoon cooking for him, to go be with his mistress. The storm inside her erupted. "You're a liar," she said. Her voice trembled with a rage that surprised them both. Arthur froze, his hand on the door. He turned slowly, an expression of genuine surprise on his face. Eleanor had never spoken to him like that before. "What did you just say?" "I said you're a liar," she repeated, her voice stronger now. "There's no crisis at the office. You're going to see her. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it." A muscle in his jaw twitched. He dropped the pretense, his expression hardening into something cold and dangerous. "And what if I am? What are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to leave you, Arthur," she said, her chin up. "And I'm going to take half of everything you own. And if you put up a fight, I'll expose you for the criminal you are." He let out a short, ugly laugh. "You're delusional. You have nothing." "But I do," she said, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. "I know all about the shell companies. I know about the offshore accounts. I know how you built this empire on a foundation of fraud. And I have proof." The color drained from his face. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, a raw, primal fear. He took a step toward her, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "You're lying." "Am I?" she taunted, emboldened by his reaction. "Check your safe, Arthur. I have it all. And it's not in this house. It's in a safe place, a place you'll never find it." It was a lie, of course. The evidence was on her phone, but he didn't know that. His face contorted with fury. He lunged at her, grabbing her by the arms, his fingers digging into her skin. "You stupid bitch," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "You have no idea what you've done." He shoved her hard. Eleanor stumbled backward. Her swollen belly made her clumsy. Her heel caught on the edge of the kitchen rug, and she fell, her head hitting the sharp corner of the marble island with a sickening crack. The world went black. When Arthur called Sophia an hour later, his voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. "It's done," he said, standing over Eleanor's motionless body. "She's gone." "Gone?" Sophia's voice was a breathless whisper on the other end of the line. "What did you do?" "She had an accident," he said softly. "She fell, hit her head. He drove her to the coast. She always loved the ocean." He didn't tell her that Eleanor was still breathing when he wrapped her in a heavy-duty tarp from the garage. He didn't tell her about the chilling finality of the wait when he loaded her into the trunk of his car. He didn't tell her about the baby. Some details were best left unsaid. He drove for hours up the winding coastal highway, the rain a furious curtain against his windshield. He found a deserted stretch of cliff, a place where the rocks dropped 100 feet to the black, churning water below. He worked quickly and efficiently, his movements precise and methodical. He was Arthur Sterling. He solved problems. When he returned to the city, it was nearly 3 in the morning. He drove to Sophia's loft, a cavernous space in a converted warehouse, the air thick with the smell of oil paint and her black orchid perfume. She was waiting for him, pacing anxiously with a glass of whiskey in her hand. She flew into his arms, her body trembling. "Is it over?" she whispered. "It's over. She's gone. She's never to be found." He kissed her, his voice laced with the exhilaration of a plan executed. I parked her car, the one with her purse in the passenger seat, in a long-stay lot at the airport. A red herring for the inevitable police investigation. I cleaned it of my fingerprints. I didn't bother to look inside the handbag. In his panicked haste, it was an oversight, a small detail he would come to regret. Sophia pulled back, her dark eyes searching his. "Are you sure? What if someone saw you?" "No one saw me," he said, his voice firm. "I was careful. In a few days, I'll report her missing. A distraught husband worried about his unstable, pregnant wife. They'll look, of course, but they won't find anything." A slow smile spread across Sophia's face, a mixture of relief and euphoria. She refilled her whiskey glass and poured one for him. "To freedom," she said, raising her glass. Arthur clinked his glass against hers. "To freedom," he repeated, the word tasting like ashes in his mouth. They were free. They were safe. They had gotten away with it. A cold trail. 2 days later, a conveniently frantic Arthur Sterling walked into the 10th precinct of the Boston Police Department and reported his pregnant wife, Eleanor Vance, missing. He wrung his hands, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion, as he told the desk sergeant she had been depressed, acting erratically, and that he was worried sick. The case landed on the desk of Chief Inspector David Miller, and the game was about to change. Chief Inspector Miller felt a familiar weariness settle into his bones as he drove his modest sedan up the winding driveway of the Sterling estate. The place did not look like a home. It looked like a fortress of wealth, a sterile monument of glass and white stone that seemed to reject the very cliffs it was built upon. In his 30 years on the force, Miller had learned that the bigger the house, the bigger the secrets. And this house was immense. He was met at the door by Arthur Sterling himself. The man was exactly what Miller had expected. Tall, handsome, impeccably dressed in a sober gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Miller's monthly mortgage payment. He radiated an aura of controlled, pained power. It was a performance, and Miller recognized it instantly. He'd seen it 100 times before. "Inspector," "Thank you for coming so quickly," Arthur said, his voice a carefully modulated baritone, thick with rehearsed emotion. He shook Miller's hand, his grip firm, his eyes holding a practiced look of desperation. "Mr. Sterling," Miller said, his own voice a low rumble, "why don't you walk me through what happened?" The tour was a masterclass in performative grief. Arthur pointed to significant empty spaces in the cavernous house. "This was Eleanor's favorite reading nook," he would say, gesturing to a sleek, uncomfortable-looking chaise lounge. A pristine hardcover novel sat on an end table next to a half-finished cup of herbal tea. Everything was too perfect, like a theater set. Miller noted that there were no personal photographs, no clutter of a life lived, only curated art and expensive furniture. The air was cold, with a faint smell of lemon cleaner and the sickly sweet funereal scent of white lilies that stood stiffly in a giant vase in the entranceway. "I just don't understand it," Arthur said, pausing to rub his temples. "She was so excited about the baby. A little hormonal, maybe. Moody. But it's not like her to just run off." "When was the last time you saw her, Mr. Sterling?" Miller's question was casual, but his eyes were sharp, cataloging the absences. "Saturday night," Arthur replied smoothly. "I had to go to the office, a last-minute emergency with our Asian markets. I told her not to wait up for me. When I got home, around 2, she was gone. Her car was gone. I just assumed she'd gone for a drive to clear her head. We'd had a small disagreement, nothing major." "And you didn't call us until this afternoon, Monday?" Miller's question was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "That's nearly 36 hours. I didn't want to overreact," Arthur said, the explanation coming a little too quickly. "She's done this before, after an argument. Gone to stay with her sister for a night. I called her sister her friends. No one had heard from her. That's when I started to panic. I feel like such a fool for waiting." He let his voice crack just enough to be convincing. Miller simply nodded, his face impassive. "Verify alibi. Verify friends. Verify sister. Note the delay." The story was plausible on the surface, but it felt hollow. It was a story designed to be told to the police. The initial sweep of the house was fruitless. The forensics team, led by a meticulous veteran named Commissioner Delgado, found nothing. No signs of a struggle. No suicide note. No blood. The kitchen, where Arthur said they last spoke, was the most troubling part. "It's clean," Delgado told Miller, peeling off his latex gloves. "I mean, professionally clean. There's a faint smell of bleach under the citrus cleaner. They couldn't find a single clear print on the countertops or appliances, not even Eleanor's. A clean crime scene was always a loud alarm bell. It screamed cover-up. The only thing they found was a single, long, dark hair near the base of the marble kitchen island caught in the grout. It was too long and dark to be Eleanor's, and they bagged it. A single lonely clue in a sterile sea of nothingness. The break came the following afternoon. A patrol unit running license plates at Boston's Logan Airport got a hit on Eleanor's silver Mercedes. It was parked on the 4th level of the labyrinthine long-term parking garage. The air in the garage was thick with the smell of exhaust and stale, recycled air. Miller supervised the forensics team as they descended on the vehicle. It was also clean. The steering wheel, the gear shift, the door handles, all wiped clean. The ticket on the dashboard was time-stamped 11:47 p.m. on Saturday night. Another dead end. The scene was perfectly staged to suggest a woman fleeing her life, catching a plane to anywhere. But Arthur Sterling, for all his meticulous planning, had made a colossal error in judgment. A detective, a sharp young officer named Agent Chen, called from the passenger side of the car. "You'll want to see this." There, on the luxurious leather of the passenger seat, Almost hidden in the dim light was a simple, expensive-looking leather-bound handbag. It seemed impossible that a woman in a hurry to flee would forget her purse. Miller's weary heart gave a heavy thump against his ribs. This was it. This was the mistake. Back at the precinct, under the sterile glare of the lab lights, they carefully inventoried the contents of the handbag. It was a window into Eleanor's life, a wallet containing a few $100s in cash, and a row of credit cards, a set of keys, a tube of expensive lipstick, a bottle of prenatal vitamins, and a paperback novel. And then, at the bottom, wrapped in a protective plastic sleeve, was a simple, leather-bound diary. Miller handled the diary as if it were a sacred artifact. He opened it carefully. The pages smelled faintly of old paper and a light floral perfume he now associated with the ghost of Eleanor Vance. He began to read, and the carefully constructed facade of Arthur Sterling began to crumble. He read for hours, ignoring the ringing phones and the chatter of the squad room. He read of Eleanor's crushing loneliness, her growing fear of her husband, her methodical documentation of his lies, and then he came to a name written over and over, Sophia Ramos. The diary detailed the late-night calls, the scent of turpentine and perfume on Arthur's clothes, the discovery of the affair. Miller's next stop was Sophia Ramos's loft. The converted warehouse district was a world away from the manicured perfection of the Sterling estate. He found her working on a massive, violent canvas, splattered with paint, her clothes and hands stained. She was striking, exuding the intense, focused confidence of an artist. She played the part of the concerned acquaintance, her brow furrowed with artistic sympathy. "It's just tragic," she said, wiping her hands on a rag, the thick smell of oil paint in the air. "Poor Eleanor. I barely knew her, of course. I know Arthur through my work. He's a wonderful, generous man. I can't imagine what he must be going through." "When was the last time you saw Mr. Sterling?" Miller asked, his tone deceptively casual. "Oh, let me think," she said, tilting her head in a gesture that seemed rehearsed. "It must have been last week, before his trip. He came to see a new piece." "Not Saturday night?" Miller asked, watching her face closely. For a split second, a flash of pure panic crossed her features before she could control it. "Saturday?" She laughed, a sound a little too high-pitched. "No, I was here, immersed in my work. I was alone all night." Miller let a small, humorless smile touch his lips. It was a complete bluff, a shot in the dark, but his gut told him it would hit its mark. "That's funny, because we have a witness who saw Mr. Sterling's car parked right outside your building for several hours on Saturday night. It's hard to mistake a car like his." It was a complete lie, but she didn't know that. Sophia paled visibly. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin the sallow color of an unprimed canvas. That's impossible," she stammered. "Your witness must be mistaken. There are many cars." Miller didn't press. He didn't need to. He had seen the truth in her eyes. He left her standing, motionless in the middle of her studio, like a deer caught in headlights. Back in his car, the city lights blurred through the rain-soaked windshield. Miller felt the pieces of the case clicking into place. A lying husband, a lying mistress, a coordinated alibi. A body was missing, but he could smell a murder in the air. That night, back at his desk, he turned to the final pages of the diary, the ones Eleanor had written in the last days of her life. And that's when the case exploded. He read about the safe, the files, the shell companies, the systematic fraud. He read her declaration of war. "He thinks I am weak. He thinks I am a fool. He has no idea what I am capable of. He is about to find out. This is no longer just about the affair. This is about survival." Miller's blood ran cold. This wasn't a simple love triangle that had exploded into violence. This was an execution. Arthur Sterling hadn't killed his wife because she had found out about his girlfriend. He had killed her because she had found the key to his fraudulent kingdom and was about to set it on fire. Eleanor Ruiz Vance had not just been a scorned wife. She had been a threat to his entire empire. He grabbed the phone, his knuckles white, and dialed the district attorney's office. "This is Miller," he said, his voice a low, grim growl. "I need a warrant. A full financial warrant for Arthur Sterling, his businesses, and every shell company he has ever touched. Our missing person is now the victim in a homicide investigation, and I believe we're about to uncover one of the biggest financial frauds this city has seen in years." The diary had opened the door. Now it was time to kick it down and see what monsters were hiding in the darkness. Justice is served. The leather-bound diary lay on Chief Inspector Miller's desk like a time bomb. Under the harsh, buzzing fluorescent lights of the squad room, it felt less like an object and more like a presence. It was Eleanor Ruiz Vance, and she was finally ready to speak. Miller, along with his sharp young partner, Agent Chen, began the solemn task of dissecting her final months, treating each page as a witness statement from the grave. The early entries painted a bleak portrait of deep loneliness, a slow-motion poisoning of the spirit. They weren't just accounts of sadness. They were accusations of neglect, written in a precise, elegant hand that belied the turmoil within. August 14th. Another night alone. Arthur called to say he was stuck in a board meeting. I heard music in the background. Laughter. A woman's laughter. When I asked him about it, he said it was the television in the conference room. He lies so easily now. It's like breathing for him. I wonder if he ever told the truth, even at the beginning. "She's methodical," Chen observed, looking up from the photocopied page. "She notes dates, times, excuses. She's not just venting, she's building a record." Miller nodded grimly. She was a librarian. She knew how to catalog information. She was cataloging her own misery. The tone of the diary shifted from melancholy to anguish after the charity gala. The nebulous fear of an affair now had a name and a face. Sophia Ramos. Eleanor's entries became sharper, infused with the painful, specific details of the betrayal. October 12th. Her name is Sophia Ramos, the artist. Of course, it makes perfect sense. He's not just sleeping with her. He adores her. He talks about her vision, her genius. He's never used those words about me. I was just convenient, a suitable accessory, a womb. I looked up her work online tonight. It's all furious brushstrokes of color, chaotic and violent. Is that what he sees in her? A reflection of his own soul? Or just a fire to warm himself while I freeze in this glass palace? But the real bombshell came in the final, fateful entries. The discovery of the files in Arthur's safe transformed the diary from a chronicle of a broken heart into the cornerstone of a major criminal investigation. Eleanor's voice changed. Her fear was replaced by a cold, electrifying determination. This was no longer the diary of a victim, but the field log of a combatant. December 7th. I have them. All of them. The files from the safe. It's worse than I ever imagined. It's not just tax evasion. It's a massive Ponzi scheme, it seems. He's been using new investor money to pay off old ones, propping up his real estate ventures with phantom profits. The entire Sterling empire, this glass house, is built on sand, and the tide is about to come in. He has used shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands, all with names from his favorite Shakespearean characters. Fortunate Investments, Prospero Assets. The irony is sickening. He sees himself as a master manipulator, a king pulling the strings. But he was careless. He used the same lawyer, a man named Mark Torres, to set them all up. His signature is on every document. Miller paused, his pen suspended over his notepad. Mark Torres. He underlined the name 3 times. Get me everything on this guy, he told Chen. And find a lawyer named Sarah Molina who specializes in forensic accounting. Eleanor spoke with her. The next pages contained a meticulously transcribed list of account numbers, transaction dates, and corporate entities. It was a detailed roadmap of Arthur's criminal enterprise. Eleanor had not only found the weapon, but she had also provided the ballistics report. The team moved with renewed urgency. The financial warrant, fast-tracked by a judge who saw the potential scale of the fraud, came down at dawn. Miller sent 2 of his most experienced detectives, a pair of grizzled veterans named O'Malley and Diaz, to visit Mark Torres. Torres's office was on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper, a symphony of polished mahogany and smug success. He received the detectives with the unctuous confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. That confidence evaporated the moment O'Malley slid the warrant across the massive desk. A financial warrant? Torres scoffed, barely looking at it. This is harassment. I'll have to ask you to direct any questions to me. This isn't a friendly chat, Mr. Torres, Diaz interrupted, his voice like gravel. This is a homicide investigation. And right now, your name shows up alongside terms like criminal conspiracy, wire fraud, and accessory to murder. We can have this conversation here, or we can have it in a much smaller room downtown. You choose. The color drained from Torres's face. The mention of murder shattered his carefully constructed facade. He stammered about attorney-client privilege, but his eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. He was sweating, his hand trembling as he tried to pick up the phone to call his own lawyer. The detectives didn't need a confession. They had his fear. It was just as good. Meanwhile, Miller and Chen visited Sarah Molina. Her office was the polar opposite of Torres's, modest, cluttered, and practical. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s. Yes, I remember the call, she confirmed, looking at them over her glasses after Miller explained the situation. She didn't give a name. She said her husband was a prominent businessman. She walked me through a hypothetical scenario that involved offshore accounts and overlapping investments to hide income. I'll be honest with you, detectives, it sounded less like a hypothetical and more like she was reading from a textbook on how to run a Ponzi scheme. Did she sound scared? Chen asked. Sarah Molina paused, considering. Not scared, determined. There was steel in her voice. She said the proof was irrefutable, and she intended to use it to secure her freedom and her child's future. She was supposed to call me back to schedule a formal consultation. She never did. Back at the precinct, the last pieces fell into place with stunning speed. The lab report on the single dark hair found near the kitchen island came back. The DNA was a perfect match for Sofia Ramos. Miller stood in front of the large whiteboard, a storm of evidence swirling around the photos of the 3 protagonists. He drew a thick red line from Arthur to Sofia, labeling it affair. He drew another from Arthur to Mark Torres, labeling it financial fraud. Then he drew a circle around Eleanor's smiling photo, and from her, arrows that pointed to every piece of the puzzle. She was the center. She was the one who connected it all. So here's our timeline, Miller said, pacing in front of the board, his voice low and intense. Eleanor discovers the affair. That's a motive for divorce. But then she discovers the fraud. That's a motive for murder. Arthur Sterling isn't just facing the loss of half his assets. He's facing 20 years in federal prison. His whole kingdom is about to collapse. She confronts him Saturday night. He realizes she's not lying. Chen picked up the thread. He panics. No, Miller corrected, stopping his pacing. This guy doesn't panic. He rages. Eleanor mentioned his temper in the diary. He doesn't see a problem to be solved. He sees an existential threat to be eliminated. He tapped Arthur's photo. A narcissist like this, when he's cornered, doesn't negotiate. He annihilates. And Sophia was there, Chen added, pointing to the lab report pinned to the board. She lied about being at her studio. She was at the house. She was either a participant or a witness, Miller agreed. Either way, she's an accomplice. They kill Eleanor, probably an impulsive act of violence during the argument, a shove, a fall, a blow against that marble island. Then the cleanup. They scrub the kitchen, get rid of the body, stage the car at the airport to make it look like she ran away. A distraught husband reports his unstable pregnant wife missing. It's a textbook, clean cover-up. He paused, picking up the leather-bound diary from the evidence table. But they made one fatal mistake. In their arrogance, in their haste to get rid of the woman, they forgot her words. They forgot her mind. They left behind the most powerful witness against them. He looked at the faces of his team, the grim reality of the case settling on them. They had gone from a missing person case to a complex web of infidelity, corporate crime, and murder in less than 48 hours. All because a woman had the courage to write it all down. "All right," Miller said, his voice hard as iron. "Let's go get them. Let's see how well Mr. Sterling's and Ms. Ramos's stories hold up when they're not celebrating their freedom, but sitting in separate interrogation rooms, facing charges of first-degree murder." The diary had done its job. It had spoken for the victim. Now it was time for the law to pull the monsters out of the darkness. The final twist. The arrests were timed with military precision, executed in the cold, gray moments just before dawn. At the Sterling mansion, the silent majesty of the glass and stone structure was shattered by the loud, authoritative knock on the door. Arthur Sterling, wearing a black silk robe, opened it himself. The mask of the grieving husband, so carefully worn for days, disintegrated in an instant. It wasn't fear or surprise that glinted in his eyes, but a chilling, contemptuous fury. He looked insulted by the intrusion, by the sheer audacity of the law breaking into his kingdom. He said nothing as the handcuffs were closed around his wrists, his gaze fixed on Chief Inspector Miller, a look of pure, reptilian hatred that promised retribution. Miles away, the scene at Sophia Ramos's loft was one of chaotic, theatrical desperation. She opened the door in a paint-splattered jumpsuit, her wild hair a halo around her pale, tear-streaked face. When the detectives identified themselves, she collapsed. A puppet with its strings cut, her sobs echoing in the vast warehouse space among her violent, furious canvases. "It was Arthur!" she shrieked, her voice a jarring instrument of practiced victimhood. "He lied to me! I don't know anything! I'm a victim too!" It was a convincing performance, but Miller had read Eleanor's diary. He knew Sophia was a victim of no one but herself. At the precinct, they were placed in separate, sterile interrogation rooms. The stark white walls and blankness were an unholy confession. The air hummed with the silent tension of a game about to begin. Miller's strategy was classic, a test of loyalty between two people who had none. He started with Sophia, letting her stew for nearly an hour, her sobs subsiding into hiccuping, ragged breaths. When he finally went in, he projected an air of weary sympathy. "This is a mess, isn't it, Sophia?" he began, placing a cup of water on the metal table. "He's a monster," she whispered, grabbing the cup with trembling hands. "He told me she was unstable. He said he was afraid she would harm the baby, that she was suicidal. He lied to you about a lot of things," Miller said, his voice soft. He let a moment of silence pass. You knew his business was a sham, a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme on the brink of collapse. Eleanor discovered it. She found evidence that could send him to prison for the rest of his life. That's why he had to get rid of her, Sophia. That's the real reason. It was never about saving you from the unstable wife. It was about saving himself from prison. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Were you there, Sophia? Did you go to the house that night? No, she insisted, her voice cracking. I was here. I was working all night, I swear. Miller sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. That's a shame, because we have you at the scene. We found one of your hairs in the kitchen. Long, dark, beautiful, a forensic coincidence. He watched as her bravado began to crumble. We also have security footage from a neighbor's house that shows your car, that distinctive red convertible, leaving the Sterling Street just after 1 in the morning, about an hour after Arthur left. And a witness saw Arthur carrying a heavy-duty tarp out to his car. Sophia's last shred of composure shattered. She stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The lies she had built dissolved before immutable facts. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a raw, animal panic. It was the frantic calculation of self-preservation. He called me. The words tumbled out in a desperate, chaotic torrent. He was in a panic. He said she attacked him, that she went crazy and fell. He said it was an accident. He begged me to come. He said he was scared. He has a bad temper. You don't know what he's like. I only helped because I was afraid of him. She was sobbing again, but these were the tears of a cornered animal, not of grief. She gave them the location of the cliff, a desperate offering to save herself, attributing every ounce of malice and intent directly to her lover. Armed with a confession and a location, Miller walked down the hall to Arthur's room. The millionaire was sitting stiffly, the picture of defiant arrogance. Miller said nothing. He simply placed the leather-bound diary on the table between them. Arthur's eyes fixed on the book. For a single, unguarded moment, his mask of icy control slipped. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated dread, the one variable he had failed to control, the one detail he had overlooked in his panicked, meticulous cleanup. We found it, Arthur, Miller said, his voice quiet, but with the weight of doom. In her handbag, in her car at the airport. You made a mistake. You forgot her diary. Miller opened the book, not to the last page, but to an entry from months earlier. He read aloud Eleanor's words about her loneliness, about feeling like a ghost in her own home, about her hopes for the baby. Then he turned to another, her account of the humiliation she felt at the gala, seeing him with Sophia. His voice was flat, dispassionate, letting Eleanor's words fill the sterile room. Finally, he turned to the last entry and read her premonition aloud. Her fear of his temper, her promise not to be silenced. When he finished, the silence was a physical thing that pressed down on them. Your girlfriend is in the next room, Miller said conversationally. She's confessed everything. She's painting a very detailed picture for the DA. A picture of a cold-blooded murderer who manipulated her and forced her to help cover up the murder of his pregnant wife. She's saving herself, Arthur. She gave you up to save her own skin. Arthur's jaw was a granite knot. His knuckles were white where he gripped the edge of the table. He was a king whose castle had just been stormed, whose subjects had betrayed him, and it was this one small, insignificant book that had brought it all crashing down. His quiet, obedient wife had been the architect of his destruction. But the story, Miller would soon learn, had one last stunning chapter. As the dive teams recovered Eleanor's body from the unforgiving sea, and the district attorney's office celebrated their airtight case, A few loose ends began to bother the inspector. The medical examiner's report landed on his desk. The cause of death was, as expected, blunt force trauma to the head. But the toxicology report contained an anomaly. There were trace amounts of a powerful, fast-acting sedative in Eleanor's system. Not enough to kill her, but certainly enough to leave a person woozy, confused, and physically impaired. It was not a medication any of her doctors had prescribed. Then, a junior detective who was recataloguing the evidence from Eleanor's car filed a report. The small escape handbag and the burner phone she had mentioned in her diary were missing. They were not in her handbag, and they were not in the trunk. They had simply vanished. Miller sat in his office late into the night, the diary open before him, the medical examiner's report at his side. The pieces did not fit the narrative of a simple confrontation gone wrong. A sedative, a missing escape bag. Her last words echoed in his mind. "I have a plan. I pray I am strong enough to carry it out." And what if the confrontation was not the plan? What if it was the plan, crumbling because of an instinct he had served for 30 years? Miller made a request. He wanted the passenger manifest for every international flight that left Logan Airport on Saturday night. His team worked through the night, fueled by black coffee and the thrill of the hunt. At 4 a.m, they found it. A one-way ticket to Buenos Aires, Argentina. It had been purchased with cash a week earlier. The name on the ticket was not Eleanor Ruiz Vance. It was Eleanor Ruiz. A quick check of Eleanor's records confirmed it. Ruiz was her mother's maiden name. The stunning final truth hit Miller with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor's plan was never to confront Arthur and beg for a divorce. That was what she wrote for them to find. Her true plan was far more audacious. She was going to escape. She had likely drugged Arthur's coffee, planning to incapacitate him long enough to retrieve the original financial documents from his safe, grab her escape bag, and vanish into the night to start a new life with her child in South America. But Arthur's unexpected decision to leave for Sophia's loft that night had foiled her desperate, brilliant plan. He had left before the sedative could fully take effect, forcing a premature, improvised confrontation. The struggle was real. The fatal blow was real. But her intention had never been to face the monster. It had been to flee from him. She had been agonizingly close to freedom. In the end, the weight of the evidence, the diary, the financial crimes, Sophia's testimony, and the body was overwhelming. Arthur Sterling was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He raged in the courtroom, a terrifying spectacle. Sophia Ramos, for her role as an accomplice, received a 15-year sentence. The Sterling empire, a shimmering mirage built on fraud, evaporated, leaving a trail of devastated investors. The glass house on the cliff was eventually sold, a monument to a spectacular downfall. And locked away in an evidence room, the leather-bound diary remained as the final testament of Eleanor Ruiz Vance, a woman whom everyone had underestimated. She had not survived the storm, but from beyond the grave, her words had unleashed a hurricane of truth, ensuring that the man who took her life and the woman who helped him would never again taste the freedom they had so cruelly celebrated. This story is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous secrets are often hidden behind the most perfect facades. It's a story of greed, betrayal, and a woman's desperate fight for survival. What do you think? Was Eleanor a tragic victim or a master manipulator whose plan went horribly wrong? Could she have escaped if Arthur hadn't come home early? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story captivated you, please like this video and share it with someone who loves a good crime drama with unexpected twists. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any other stories from the dark side of human nature. Thanks for watching.